I know, right? It's no, one of them's by a friend of mine. Um, the other one is sure someone was minding that. I have Page 2. Yedid nefesh av harachaman meshoch avdecha el retzonecha yarutz avdecha kemo el mul סביבי עליי את סוכת שלומך תאיר ארץ מכבודך נגילה ונשמחה בך מהר אהוב כי במועד וחוננו כי מעולם יאללה לי 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 יאללה לי 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 יאללה לי 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 יאללה לי יאללה לי 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 יאללה לי 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 יאללה לי 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 יאללה לי 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 יאללה לי 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 יאללה לי 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 יאללה לי 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 יאללה לי 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 יאללה לי 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 יאללה לי 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 יאללה לי 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 יאללה לי 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 לי. Shabbat Shalom, everybody. As you may have noticed, we are using a slightly different book this evening, and that's because we've entered the month of Elul, the month before we approach the days of awe. And it's a special time of reflection when every morning we hear the shofar. You may have been seeing some of our spiritual nuggets coming to you daily via email, and at the bottom there's a shofar blast every day. And so we approach these days of awe not with fear, but with love and a sense of closeness to the eternal. And so we have a special book just for the month. But there are some exceptional readings in this version, and some inclusions for these days of reflection. And it's worth noting that some of our sages teach that Elul is not just the name of the month, but is shorthand for the Song of Songs, the most famous citation from which you may be familiar. Some of you may even have it on the inside of your wedding band. Ani ledodi v'dodi li, Aleph Lamed Vav Lamed, Elul. So these days are special, and we include the readings appropriate to the season, including on page 8. We turn to the bottom of the page, and the melody we began with, one thing I have asked of God, only this do I seek, to dwell in God's house all the days of my life. Achat sha'alti me'et Adonai, page 8 at the bottom. Achat sha'alti me'et Adonai, ota vakesh. Achat sha'alti me'et Adonai, ota vakesh. Shivti beveit Adonai kol yemei chayai, לחזות בנועם אדוני ולבקר בהיכלו, לחזות בנועם אדוני ולבקר בהיכלו. I'd like to invite Rebecca Watman to come and lead us in the lighting of the candles.
Eloheinu melech haolam asher kedishanu b'mitzvotav v'tzivanu lahadlik ner shel Shabbat. Amen.
Thank you, Rebecca. We'll continue on page 13 as we enter Kabbalat Shabbat. Page 13. Lecho neranena, lecho neranena, lecho neranena l'Adonai. Lecho neranena, lecho neranena, lecho neranena l'Adonai. Naria, naria letzor yishenu, nekad mafanav betoda. Naria, Naria letzor yishenu bizmirod naria lo lecho neranena lecho neranena lecho neranena l'Adonai lecho neranena lecho neranena lecho neranena l'Adonai. Page 14. Shiru l'Adonai, shir chadash, shiru l'Adonai kol haaretz, shiru l'Adonai, baruchu shemo, basru miyom liyom yeshuato, sapru v'goyim kevodo, bechol ha'amim niflotav, ki gadol Adonai, umchulal me'od. Al kol Elohim yai lai 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 yalla lai yalla lai yalla lai 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 yalla lai ai lai 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 yalla lai yalla lai 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 השמיים ותגל הארץ ישמחו השמיים ישמחו השמיים ישמחו השמיים ותגל הארץ ירם הים ירם הים ירם הים כולו ירם הים ירם הים ירם הים ומלוא יהלו שרי וכל אשר בו אז ירננו כל הצייר לפני רוני קיבה קיבה לשפוט הארץ ישפוט תבל בצדק בימים באמונתו. Top of page 15. O Zarua la tzadik uri shreilev simcha. Or Zarua la tzadik uri shreilev simcha. Simcho tzadikim b'Adonai b'Adonai v'hodu lezecher kodesho lezecher kodesho or zarua la tzadik u yishrelev simcha. Just below. Zamru l'Adonai bechinor, bechinor v'kol zimra, בחצוצרות וקול שופר, הריעו לפני המלך אדוני, ירם הים ומלואו, תבל ויושבי בה, נהרות ימחה וכף, יחד הרים ירננו. Continuing with the words of Psalm 99. רוממו אדוני אלוהינו והשתחוו להר קודשו. רוממו אדוני אלוהינו והשתחוו להר קודשו. כי קדוש אדוני אלוהינו רוממו. כי קדוש אדוני אלוהינו רוממו. רוממו אדוני אלוהינו והשתחוו להר קודשו. רוממו אדוני אלוהינו והשתחוו להר קודשו. כי קדוש אדוני אלוהינו רוממו. כי קדוש אדוני אלוהינו רוממו. Page 16. מזמור לדוד, הבו לאדוני בני אלים, הבו לאדוני כבוד ועוז, היי, הבו לאדוני כבוד שמו, השתחוו לאדוני בהדרת קודש. כל אדוני על המים, אל הכבוד הרים. אדוני על מים רבים, כל אדוני בכוח, היי, כל אדוני בהדר, כל אדוני שובר ארזים, ושבר אדוני את ארזי הלבנון, וירקידם כמו עגל לבנון, וסיריון כמו כבובין רמים. היי, כל אדוני חוצב להבות אש, כל אדוני יכיל מדבר, יכיל אדוני מדבר קדש, כל אדוני יחלל איילות ויחשוף, ובהיכולו כולו אומר כבוד. היי, אדוני למה בו ישב, וישב אדוני מלך לעולם, אדוני עוז לא ייתן אדוני יברך את עמו בשלום. לי 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 Turn to page 18, the Psalm for Shabbat. מזמור שיר ליום השבת, טוב להודות לאדוני, ולזמר לשמך עליון, ולזמר לשמך עליון. להגיד בבוקר חסדך, ואמונתך בלילות, עלי עשור ועלי נבל, עלי היגיון בכינור. מזמור שיר ליום השבת, טוב להודות לאדוני, ולזמר לשמך עליון, ולזמר לשמך עליון. At the bottom of the page, צדיק אתה אמר יפרח, כארז בלבנון ישגה, שתולים בבית אדוני, בחצרות אלוהינו יפריחו. עוד ינובון בשיבה, דשנים ורעננים יהיו, להגיד כי ישר אדוני צורי, ולא עוולתה בו. As we read those words just now, Bechatzrot Eloheinu Yafrichu, that the courtyards of our God. And as I look out on the rooftop here, it's just so lovely to be out in this open space. And even with the planes overhead, it's still quite lovely. And you can't see this, but I can. The crescent moon straight above our 6 o'clock. It's just such a lovely thing. Hello. You see it? Oh, yes. Layla can see it. There we go. There you go. You know your moons. Let's continue with Lecha Dodi, actually, and this book is on page 22. Lecha Dodi likrat kahala b'nei Shabbat nekabela. Lecha Dodi likrat kahala b'nei Shabbat nekabela. Verse 1. Shamor v'zachor b'dibur echad, hishemihanu elam yuchad. Adonai echad u'shemo echad, l'shemu tiferet v'litila. Lecha Dodi likrat kahala b'nei Shabbat nekabela. Lecha Dodi likrat kahala b'nei Shabbat nekabela. Likrat Shabbat lechu v'nelcha, כי מקור הברכה. מראש מקדם נסוכה, סוף מעשה במחשבה תחילה. לך דודי לקראת כלה, בני שבת נקבלה. לך דודי לקראת כלה, בני שבת נקבלה. התעוררי, התעוררי, כי באורך קומי אורי. אורי, אורי, שיר דברי, כבוד אדוני עלייך נגלה. לך דודי לקראת כלה, בני שבת נקבלה. לך דודי לקראת כלה, בני שבת נקבלה. And now, if it is your custom to do so, I invite you to rise, to greet one another, to greet the metaphorical Sabbath bride. And if it is not your custom to do so, feel free to remain seated as is your custom and to greet one another. Boi v'shalom ateret bala, gam besimcha uvetzola. Toch emunei am segula, boi chala, boi chala. Lecha dodi לקראת כלה, בני שבת נקבלה. לך דודי לקראת כלה, בני שבת נקבלה. Chatzi Kaddish is on page 24. יתגדל ויתקדש שמי רבה, ועלמד יברך חירותי וימליך מלכותי, בחייכון וביומייכון ובחיי דכל בית ישראל. בגלה בגלה ובזמן קריב, ואמרו אמן. יהי שמי רבה מבורך, לעולם ולעולמי עולמיה יתברך. יתברך וישתבח, יתפאר ויתרומם ויתנשא, ויתהדר ויתעלה, ויתעלה שמי דקודשה. בריחו לעילה מן כל ברכתה ושירתה, תושבחתה ונחמתה, דמירן בעלמה, ואמרו Amen. I now invite you to rise in your hearts or to your feet for the call to prayer on page 26. Lai, 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 la, la, lai, lai, lai. Lai, 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 lai. Lai, 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 lai. Baruchu et Adonai hamevorach. Baruch Adonai hamevorach leolam va'ed. Baruch Adonai hamevorach leolam va'ed. Let's turn to page 29 and read at the bottom of the page. Holy is twilight, the realm of in-between, and so our sages taught. Pray in the moments when light and darkness touch. We are all twilight people, beyond categories and labels. May the sacred in-between of this evening suspend our certainties, soften our judgments, widen our vision. Let it illumine our way to the God who transcends all boundaries and definitions. Blessed are you, God of all, who brings on the twilight. Umavir yom umevi laila, umavdil ben yom uvein laila, Adonai tzevaot shemo, El chai v'kayam, tamid yimloch aleinu leolam va'ed, Baruch ata Adonai, Amahari v'haravim. Page 30. Ahavat olam Beit Yisrael amchavta Torah u'mitzvot chukim u'mishpatim otanu limadeta Al kein Adonai Eloheinu b'shokbeinu u'v'komeinu nasiach b'chukecha ונשמח בדברי תורתך ובמצוותיך לעולם ועד. כי הם חיינו ויורך ימינו ויורך ימינו ובהם נהגה יומם ולילה יומם ולילה באהבתך אל תסיר ממנו לעולמים ברוך אתה אדוני אוהב עמו ישראל. Open up our eyes, bottom of 31. Teach us how to live. Fill our hearts with joy and all the love you have to give. Gather us in peace as you lead us to your name, and we will know that you are one. Page 32. Shema Yisrael Adonai Eloheinu Adonai Echad. 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 Baruch Shem Kevod Malchuto Leolam Vaed. Nā lashevet, please be seated as we turn to page 35 and read together this Be'ahavta for Elul. Together. You shall love the ones who are close with all your heart, with all your spirit, with all your strength. Remember these words, inscribe them on your heart. Love them when they struggle, when they sadden and disappoint you. Love them when they fail. See the good within them, even when they can't. Look at them and listen, even when it's hard. Be grateful for their guidance, even their reproof, when they save you from yourself. Love them when they give you joy, and love them when they don't. When you lie down, let go of anger, and when you rise up at dawn, begin again. Praise them for their deeds at home. Speak to them in public with respect. Bind yourself to the ones you love with promises kept and vows fulfilled. Open them of your heart, the doorway of your soul, and let them know you. So shall the ones you cherish feel your love, your presence, and your care. Let's continue on page 38. Truth and faith, these are fundamental to our existence. God alone is their source, and we are Israel, a people of God. Join with me. Our sovereign saves us from tyranny, redeems us from its violence through countless wonders, from its brutality through great feats beyond measure. We are Israel, a people of God, the giver of life who would not let our feet give way, the maker of miracles for us against Pharaoh, of signs and portents in the land of Egypt, the one who brought our people, Israel, from its midst to enduring freedom. We turn to page 40 and recall that redemption. ומלכותו ברצון קיבלו עליהם, משה ומרים ובני ישראל לכהנו שירה בשמחה רבה, ויאמרו כולם. We're in the middle of page 40. מי כמוך באלים אדוני, מי כמוך נהדר בקודש, נורא תהילות עושה פלא, נורא תהילות עושה פלא. מלכותך ראו בניך, בוקע ים לפני משה ומרים, זה אלי אנו ויאמרו, זה אלי אנו ויאמרו. אדוני ימלוך לעולם ועד, אדוני ימלוך לעולם ועד. ונאמר כי פדה אדוני את יעקב, וגואלו מיד חזק ממנו, ברוך אתה אדוני גאל ישראל. As we turn our thoughts to sleep, we ask God to spread the Sukkot Shalom over us. Right now, God is sending an airliner over us, so I'll wait till it clears its flight path. We're on page 42. Hashkivenu Adonai Eloheinu leshalom, ve'amidenu shomreinu, shomreinu lechayim. Hashkivenu Adonai Eloheinu leshalom, ve'amidenu shomreinu, shomreinu lechayim. Ufros aleinu Sukkot shlomecha. Ufros aleinu Sukkot shlomecha. Baruch atah Adonai haporei Sukkot shalom aleinu ve'al kol amo Yisrael ve'al Yerushalayim. Page 45 at the bottom of the page. Peace comes with the sunset. Cool breezes ease the heat of the day. All things settle into stillness. gentle song of crickets, moonrise, and silence of night. Give us shelter in your presence, bring peace to those who yearn for peace, enfold us in your quiet. Let our fears find rest in you. Page 46. ושמרו בני ישראל את השבת, לעשות את השבת לדורותם ברית עולם. ביני ובין בני ישראל אותי לעולם, כי ששת ימים עשה אדוני את השמיים ואת הארץ, וביום השביעי שבת ויהי נפש, וביום השביעי שבת ויהי נפש. And so we've arrived at the central prayer of the service, Amidah or Tefillah. If it is your custom to rise for Amidah, please feel free to rise in your hearts or to your feet, whichever is most comfortable. We're at the bottom of page 48. Adonai svatai tiftach, Adonai svatai tiftach, ufi yagid tehilatecha, ufi yagid tehilatecha. Page 50. Baruch atah Adonai Eloheinu ve'Elohei Avotenu ve'imotenu, Elohei Avraham, Elohei Yitzchak, ve'Elohei Yaakov, Elohei Sarah, Elohei Rivka, Elohei Rachel, ve'Elohei Leah. האל הגדול הגיבור והנורא, אל עליון, גומל חסדים טובים וקונה הכל, וזוכר חסדי אבות ואימהות, ומביא גאולה לבני בניהם, למען שמו באהבה. מלך עוזר ומושיע ומגן, ברוך אתה אדוני, מגן אברהם בעזרת שרה. 52. אתה גיבור לעולם אדוני, מחיי הכל אתה רב להושיע, מוריד הטל, מכלכל חיים בחסד, מחיי הכל ברחמים רבים, סומך נופלים ורופא חולים, ומתיר אסורים, ומקיים אמונתו לשני עבר. מי כמוך בעל גבורות ומדומה לך, מלך ממית ומחיה ומצמיח ישועה, ונאמן אתה להחיות הכל. ברוך אתה אדוני מחיי הכל. אתה קדוש ושמך קדוש, וקדושים בכל יום יהללוך סלה. ברוך אתה אדוני האל הקדוש. I invite you to continue in private meditation using the language provided on either side of the page, the Hebrew or the interpretive readings, or using the language of your heart. Feel free to continue davening at your own pace. You can also join me for a plea for peace on page 74. Oh, say shalom bimromav, oh, yaseh shalom aleinu, ve'al kol Yisrael, ve'imro, imro, amen. Yaseh shalom, shalom aleinu, ve'al kol Yisrael, Yaseh shalom, shalom aleinu ve'al kol Yisrael. Yaseh shalom, shalom aleinu ve'al kol Yisrael. Yaseh shalom, shalom aleinu ve'al kol Yisrael. Yaseh shalom, Shalom aleinu ve'al kol Yisrael v'imru Amen. Is that C sharp? D? Okay, I was close. I threw Shai for a loop there and I changed his key. But he can always catch on. As we turn to page 76, we turn our hearts toward those who are suffering in our midst, those who are ill, and those who are in pain of body or of spirit. I invite you, as my eyes meet yours, to call out a name of someone who is suffering, if you wish to share that name with the community. And I have in my thoughts as well some other people whose names I have here on the dais. So when my eyes meet yours, feel free to share a name. Let's turn to page 77 as we offer prayers for their speedy recovery of body and spirit at the bottom of the page. Mi sheberach avotenu mekor habracha laimotenu. May the source of strength, who bless the ones before us, help us find the courage to make our lives a blessing, and let us say, Amen. Mi sheberach imotenu Mekor habracha lavotenu. Bless those in need of healing with refuah shelema, the renewal of body, the renewal of spirit, and let us say, Amen. Close your books. It is such a beautiful and breezy night, so lovely and enjoyable. I feel like I should stick to a topic that is equally light and breezy, like Serena Williams. I know it's on everyone's mind, and she's just a couple of miles away here, but that's not the only item that's been in the news this week, of course. And Serena Williams is unfortunately not in our Torah portion either. But what is justice. We've been hearing a lot about it this week, haven't we? It's hard not to hear about it. The extraordinary events swirling around the Department of Justice, the FBI, photographs of classified top secret documents on the floor of the president's residence at Mar-a-Lago, former president. It's quite astounding. And our Torah portion this week, Shoftim, also deals with a variety of topics surrounding justice, including the well-known verse, Tzedek, Tzedek tirdof. Justice, justice you shall pursue. What does it mean? There's an old expression, you can't have your cake and eat it too. Justice, it seems, has the inverse. You can't have justice without doing it, without constantly doing it, without making it part of our lives and ensuring that it exists for others as well. Most of the mitzvot in Parshat Shoftim, this week's portion, can be summarized as being concerned with the establishment of a structure for civic society in the land once the Israelites are to settle it. And the opening verses lay out the need for judges and magistrates, the need then for multiple reliable witnesses, and the process for administering processes like how to decide if someone can be subjected to the death penalty, and rules for the priesthood when they get involved. And next, the qualifications for selecting a king to set above the people. This is the structure of the ancient society. And we see in this model what came to be known as Shalosh Ketarim, the three crowns of leadership. The Shoftim v'Shotrim that are mentioned at the outset of the portion, the judges and magistrates, eventually come to be known as the rabbis of the Great Assembly, or the Sanhedrin, and they administer civic law. It's worth noting that the modern Israeli police get their name from the same root word as Shotrim, Shoter, Mishtara. You'll see them called. So that's the first crown. The Keter Kehuna, the crown of the priesthood, deals with ritual laws and the temple and the activities within its precincts and the Levites who are dispersed throughout the country. Keter Malchut is the crown of kingship, concerned with the cohesion of the nation as a whole, its military, its defense, when it goes to war. One might view the first as being concerned with what happens in the streets, the second, what happens in the temple and in the heavens, and the third, what happens beyond the nation's borders. And while it's not a perfect mirror to our society, we do see the start of what is a division of labor, or as we call it in America, a separation of powers. Now, as we know from history, various times due to internal and external pressures, this model of Jewish life didn't stand up. Sometimes the divisions weren't exactly equal, and sometimes the lines got pretty blurry. At times the king dominated, and sometimes was even propped up by foreign powers. At times the priesthood was selected by foreign powers. And at times the rabbis were at odds with the priesthood, and eventually they themselves recreated Jewish life as we know it once the political entity was gone and the temple was no more. But the Torah takes pains nonetheless to outline God's concerns for what an earthly king might do or might be like. Rak lo yirbe lo susim. He shall not keep many horses, nor send people back to Egypt to add to his horses. Velo yarbe lo nashim, and he shall not have many wives, lest his heart go astray. The kesef v'zahav lo yarba lo me'od, and he shall not amass much silver and gold to excess. And when he is seated on his royal throne, he shall have a copy of this teaching, HaTorah Hazot, this Torah, for him to learn from and read from all the days of his life. Torah is concerned that a ruler observe the rules, the laws of the land. God is concerned, though, with the potential for the abuse of power by that ruler, and with good cause, because power hates a vacuum, and power corrupts, and absolute power corrupts. You know it. Without reading the law and keeping it handy, if for no other reason than just to have as a reminder, a human ruler gives in to impulsiveness, greed, temptation, corruption, injustice. Without the proper guardrails, the balance of power tilts, and we all spill off the steep cliff. Now, the word for justice, tzedek, it's not simply justice. We know it in another form, right? The word tzedakah, which we sometimes think of as charity, right? You take a couple coins, you put it in the pushki, they grow a tree in Israel, they help a kid in Queens. But tzedakah is not just charity, it's righteousness. It's righteous justice. Rather than referring strictly to monetary donations, it's really about righting the wrongs of the world. And the Talmud teaches us in Tractate Sukkah, whoever does justice and charity is regarded as if he filled the whole world with kindness. It's that important. Tzedek, tirdof. It's rare in the Torah to have a word repeated twice like this for emphasis. Justice, righteousness, you shall pursue. So it's not enough to simply appoint the judges and the magistrates and hope that justice will merely happen, because, as we know, that's not how things work. It's not enough to have a king to rule and trust that the king's power will go completely unchecked. Justice, therefore, must be active. Justice must be sought out. Justice must be chased after like a gazelle, or it may elude us completely. It must flow like a mighty river, or, if you will, like the force between us. For the true judge, Hadayan Ha'emet, likewise cannot be restrained or bound, so neither should his justice. For when, conversely, justice, either as a concept or as the governmental entity, is choked off to a trickling stream, our society becomes parched and brittle. And we become more concerned with protecting what is ours than the suffering of those around us. And that indifference over years cakes up into a pattern of injustice that especially strikes the most vulnerable among us. While indifference is passive and curable, injustice is corrosive. It's a force that threatens the fabric of society and breeds distrust among neighbors. It ingrains itself into civic institutions in ways that wear down those who are historically oppressed. But it also allows for damage to our environment. It affects our climate. It prevents schools from being properly air-conditioned. It corrodes pipes that supply clean water to people in cities like Flint, Michigan, and as we saw this week, Jackson, Mississippi. As the saying goes, Ein mayim ela Torah. There is no water but Torah. And the inverse is also true. There is no law, no justice without water. The society God envisions is one where justice flows like water, where even the rights of those who commit accidental manslaughter are protected. But the Torah portion this week concludes with the description of an unusual ritual, which is fairly forgotten, called the Egla Arufah, the beheaded calf. Now, this concerns what to do when a body is found in the field, someone who's been murdered, and the culprit is unknown. The priests, like detectives in some Levitical law and order, descend on the crime scene. You can see them, and instead of their rain jackets, they're wearing their priestly robes. And they measure the distance from the body to the closest towns to determine jurisdiction. And when they find the closest town, they go there, and the elders of the town are informed, and they do this. They take a young calf that has not given birth yet, they take it to a dry riverbed, and they break its neck. And then they declare, Yadenu lo shafchu et hadam hazeh, ve'einenu lo ra'u. Our hands did not shed this blood, nor did our eyes see it. It's a strange thing to say. Of course the elders of the village didn't commit the murder. Of course they didn't see it. We don't know who did it. So why are they saying this? And why are they torturing this poor animal? I mean, it's as though they reenact the criminal act, right? It's shocking. And that's its intent. The act and the accompanying statement are not meant to cast off responsibility. They are rather to accept responsibility in a communal fashion, to let everyone know we could have done something. Perhaps we didn't see this person. We didn't see the act and we didn't commit it, but maybe we could have done something to intercede that would have prevented this from happening. Perhaps if we had not ignored this person or left them to their fate, perhaps if we had sent them away with food, they might not have been hungry and been forced to attack someone on the road. Or perhaps if we'd sent them with food, they would be strong enough to defend themselves when someone accosted them on the road. This person has no future, and nor does the calf, symbolically, though it seems the calf is worst off, to be sure. But the sacrifice of the valuable asset of an animal seems to be acknowledging that even without admission of guilt, that the community had a responsibility to do more. The Torah is telling us that even when we don't know the victim of a crime, and even if we don't know the culprit, even if we just see it as we're flicking through the channels and stop for a moment on the news, that we bear some responsibility as a society. We must not become indifferent. We must not allow ourselves to become complacent and accept violence or injustice in our midst. To do so allows indifference to fester, metastasize, corrupt, and corrode all the way to the top. It compels those who face injustice to demand that we defund the police, and it allows others who've committed crimes, say, at the Capitol, to demand we defund the FBI. And that's not justice. Neither is justice. We can't have a society that pursues justice when the shoftim v'shotrim, those charged with law, are diminished and intimidated, threatened, and painted as though they're doing the opposite of what they've dedicated their lives to doing. To do so is to invite lawlessness and chaos that are the opposite of the vision of society imagined in this week's Torah portion. And to weaken the infrastructure of a just society weakens the protections for the least of its participants. And to what end? Why would someone want to do this, we must ask? The attacks in recent weeks and months at the highest ranks on truth and justice are not just attacks on the Department of Justice, but on the American way. This is the way of the strong man, to break a society and then say, only I can fix it. And for us as Jews, it smells of the threat of tyranny and fanaticism and fascism that drove many of our ancestors to the shore of this country, and from whose aftermath their surviving cousins came to the modern state of Israel. To those whose parents, grandparents, and great-grandparents escaped anti-Semitism and fascism, whether in Europe or the Middle East, the permission that this extremism has granted to racists and nationalists to spew forth hatred against minorities, including us, is frightening. And those attacks on us and on justice itself erode American democracy and the civic institutions that made it great in the first place. And that diminishment by defect or by way of political influence only serves the strong man. To create gaps for a manipulator to fill a void by creating chaos, for the power-hungry king with too many horses and too many wives and too much gold, seeking only to enlarge themselves. This week, as we watched affidavits get released and redacted and pictures of evidence, we also saw false narratives and people clinging to power that has already evaporated. And in this turn, some of us felt shame and some of us felt pride. And some of us felt, aha, the system is working, at last. Evidence of criminality has been uncovered and justice may finally be served. But is that enough? Is that what the Torah wants? For us to wait for justice to be served up to those at the highest echelons of our society? Because in the streets of America this week, there was still much violence and bloodshed. And every day people were murdered and bodies were left in the open. And yes, the police will come and they'll investigate and they'll measure distances and local authorities will get involved and make pronouncements. But is justice truly served if we remain indifferent, safely ensconced in our homes? Will we slaughter some sacred cow to alert our neighbors that we all share responsibility? You see, the Eternal doesn't just want a system that pursues justice. That's just the start. Tzedek tirdof, righteousness, justice, you shall pursue, means that all of us, we together, and as individuals, must pursue it as well. And this is why we're commanded to feed the hungry and clothe the naked, not out of charity, but so that our society is more just. By leaving the corners of our proverbial fields for the destitute, by collecting money and food to feed our neighbors, we can help prevent those in need from potentially resorting to violence and crime to survive, and likewise protect them from being exploited and preyed upon. We pursue justice. Then and only then can we, like the elders of the village in this week's Parsha, closest to the corpse, declare, our hands did not shed this blood, nor did our eyes see it, because we cannot close our eyes to it, and we cannot look at our hands and feel like we've done nothing. Thus will you remove guilt from your midst for the blood of the innocents, for you will be doing what is right in the sight of Adonai. Shabbat Shalom. We'll continue with our concluding prayers. Aleinu is found on page 78. I invite you to rise. Aleinu leshabeach la'adon hakol, lateit gedula liotzer bereshit, shelo asanu kegoyei ha'aratzot, velo samanu kemishpechot ha'adama, shelo sam chelkeinu kahem, וגורלנו ככל עמונם, ואנחנו קוראים ומשתחווים ומודים לפני מלך מלכי המלכים, הקדוש ברוך הוא. Bottom of 80, ונאמר, והיה אדוני למלך על כל הארץ, ביום ההוא יהיה אדוני אחד, ושמו אחד. You may be seated. As we turn to page 86, we turn our thoughts to those we have loved and lost. This week we are remembering the passing of Sheila Edelberg and Janet Dole Spector. In this past 30 days, we are remembering in Shloshim Jeffrey Cohen and Joan Wachtler. We are also observing the yahrzeits of Robin Aaron, Bertha Asher, Enid Asher, Helen Baskin, Aaron Greenberg, Jeffrey Kaplan, Lois Frankel, Daniel Stern, and Ida Goldfarb. If there are others whose names I have not mentioned, feel free to rise at this time and share their names with us. If it is your custom to rise in support of those who are reciting Kaddish or to recite Kaddish for the martyrs of our people, feel free to do so at this time as we read together. Yitkadal v'yikadash shemei Rabba, ve'alma divra chirutei v'amlich malchutei, v'chayechon uv'yomechon uv'chayei dechol Beit Yisrael, ba'agala uv'izman kariv v'imru Amen. Yehei shmei Rabba mevorach le'elam olomei almaya, yitbarach v'yishtabach v'yitpa'ar v'yitromam v'yitnaseh, v'yitadar v'yitale v'yithalal shmei dekudesha brichu, leila min kol birchata v'shirata, tushbechata v'nechmata, da'amiran be'alma v'imru Amen. Yehei shlama Rabba min shemaya, v'chayim aleinu ve'al kol Yisrael v'imru Amen. Oseh shalom bimromav, hu ya'aseh shalom aleinu ve'al kol Yisrael v'imru Amen. You may be seated. Before we conclude, a few announcements. So, Torah study tomorrow at 9:15. The shmooze starts at 9 o'clock. And Shabbat morning service follows directly at 10:30. The high holidays begin Sunday, September 25th. That's Erev Rosh Hashanah. We are looking for ushers and table volunteers for the high holidays. Please help us help you. We need people to help check tickets, give out large print prayer books, distribute hearing devices. If you are interested in being of assistance, please see Sandy Kaplan. Sandy, raise your hand. No, okay. There he is in the back. There he is. Okay, see Sandy Kaplan or come to the front office. We would greatly appreciate your help. Many great events going on this week. I'll just mention a few. There's an early childhood center meet and greet on Tuesday morning. If you want to come and meet your kids or grandkids' teachers, it's at 9:15 here. Adult Ed for the next 4 Thursdays at 7:30. Rabbi Stoller and I are teaching on 7 o'clock, it says. You're right, 7 o'clock, forgive me. Adult Ed, preparing for the high holy days, preparing our hearts for the high holy days. Okay, next Saturday night, just a little advance warning, we're having a Havdalah of healing on the bridge to commemorate 9/11. We'll meet at the bridge by the library. I think most of us are familiar where that is. And many other events going on. Check your emails. Just going to say that. Check your emails. I know there's a lot of them coming out, but in addition to daily morning minyan. There's so much going on. Thank you to everyone who helped. Thank you to Phil for ushering tonight, and thank you to Shai for being here. And we want to thank also all of our bakers. Yes. I'm just going to run through the list name. Roberta Lulov, Linda Diamond, Sharon Freeman, Martha Hirsch, Ellen Safian, Ina Pakhtar, Donna Ganzer, Arlene Nevins. Anyone else? Who did I miss? Sherry? Did Sherry bake? Okay, and Sherry. Thank you, Sherry. Okay, I'm going to invite up the motions for Kiddush and Hamotzi, which can be found on page 12. Okay. Kiddush. Pour a little wine in that glass there. Nope, you're good. Page 12. ויהי ויבוקר יום השישי, ויחולו השמיים והארץ וכל צבאם, ויכל אלוהים ביום השביעי מלאכתו אשר עשה, וישפוט ביום השביעי מכל מלאכתו אשר עשה, ויברך אלוהים את יום השביעי, ויקדש אותו כי היבו שבת מכל מלאכתו אשר ברא אלוהים לעשות צברי. ברוך אתה אדוני אלוהינו מלך העולם, Bore peri agafen, Baruch atah Adonai Eloheinu melech haolam, asher kitshanu b'mitzvotav v'ratzavanu, v'shabbat kodsho b'yahava uvratzon hinchilanu, zikaron lema'aseh v'reishit, ki hu yom techila lemikra'e kodesh, zecher letziat mitzrayim, kivanu v'acharta, ואותנו קידשת מכל העמים, ושבת קודשך באהבה וברצון הנחלתנו. ברוך אתה אדוני מקדש השבת לחיים. Take a sip. All right. And hamotzi. Cover it, unwrap it. It's unwrapped? Yes, it is. Okay, raise it up, please, so everyone can see. Thank you, Margalovs, for the challah. Baruch atah Adonai Eloheinu melech haolam, hamotzi lechem min haaretz. Amen. All right, everybody, Shabbat Shalom. We'll conclude with a little Od Yavo Shalom Aleinu on page 92. Od Yavo Shalom Aleinu, Od Yavo Shalom Aleinu, Od Yavo Shalom Aleinu ve'al kulam. Od Yavo Shalom Aleinu, Od Yavo Shalom Aleinu, Od Yavo Shalom Aleinu ve'al kulam. Salam Aleinu ve'al kol ha'olam. Salam, salam. Salam aleinu ve'al kol ha'olam, salam shalom. Od yavo shalom aleinu, od yavo shalom aleinu, od yavo shalom aleinu ve'al kulam. Shabbat shalom.